right, we are ready to go.
We are ready to go. Great. Welcome to the May 26, 2021 Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. I would like to introduce the commissioners present. Myself, Jennifer Baskin, Commissioner Peter Diepenbrock, Commissioner Mark Bryman, Commissioner Dana Payne, and also staff present, which includes Assistant Library Services Director Nick Segata, am I saying it correctly? And Recreation Supervisor Todd Zio. Under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. Nick, do we have any public comment at this time? And I just want to reiterate, if there is public comment about something on the agenda item, we'd appreciate if you could hold that public comment until the agenda item is discussed.
So if any member of the public would like to make a comment on an item not listed on the agenda tonight, if you could use that raise hand feature on your Zoom screen, or if you're a dial-in caller, press *9 to raise your hand. And I am not seeing any public comment.
Okay, we will move on to regular business. Item D1 is to accept the Parks and Recreation Commission minutes for the meeting of April 28th, 2021. The minutes were in the attachment. Does anyone have any edits or changes you feel we need for those minutes? They looked good to me.
Yeah, I move to accept the minutes.
Great, thank you, Dana. May I have a second?
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Thank you, Peter. And Nick, I believe you will do a roll call to see if, to get the vote.
Roll call. So since Commissioners Payne and Diepenbrock motioned and seconded, we're assuming they're voting in favor. Commissioner Bryman, how do you vote?
Mark, you're on. Chair Baskin, yes.
Baskin. The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. The next item will be a staff report. It's the Recreation Scholarship Pilot Program. And I believe either Nick or Todd, you will be.
Yeah, I've got a brief verbal presentation. Thanks very much, Chair Baskin. So the Scholarship Pilot Program, staff brought it forward at City Council direction from the March 9th City Council meeting. Currently, there's no citywide comprehensive scholarship program. There are scholarships programs that address different facilities or programs, but none that is citywide. It fulfills a goal from the Parks and Rec Master Plan to make city recreation services both more accessible and access more equitable. We estimate from the participation in the need-based scholarship programs currently in place that 100 families could take advantage of the proposed program. The proposed scholarship would be 75% of the fee for a class or program once per activity guide cycle, up to a maximum of $250 per individual or $500 per family. If the maximum of $500 per family was taken for those 100 participants, the cost to the city would be not $50,000, it would be $30,000, since the city splits revenue 60-40 with with class instructors. So it would be a $30,000 cost. The scholarship program is tied to residency and to financial need. Currently, the scholarship programs used for their sort of qualifying documents, participation in other need-based programs like free or reduced fee school lunch programs, the SNAP program, the Women and Children's program, WIC, Women, Infant and Children's program, and other need-based programs. The details about the application process would probably be very similar to the application process that we use now in community services. But those details and the sort of publicizing of the program have yet to be determined. We would bring those back to the Parks and Rec Commission at a future meeting. Right now, we're asking for your recommendation just on the bones of the program. And then we would like to take it to the City Council for their approval, since the City Council is the body that approves fees and sets fees for the city. And that's all I have as by way of presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and Todd will probably pitch in and correct me. So happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you so much, Nick. At this point, I would like to ask for any public comments on this agenda item.
So if any member of the public has a comment they'd like to make on this agenda item on the scholarship pilot program, please use that raise hand function in Zoom or hit *9 on your phone. And I do not see any public comment at this time.
I don't see any either. One clarification on this. So is this a, and maybe I missed this when I was reading it, is this on the basis of need? Is it need and first come, first serve? How are we judging who gets these opportunities?
Right now, what we're doing is need, financial need, and residency are the two qualifying things for the scholarship program. 100 participants is a little bit on the high side, I think, since the number of participants, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong here, the number of participants that we normally get at Onetta Harris and in the gymnastics program would be much less than that number. But considering that it's proposed to be a citywide program, we thought it probably safe to say maybe a few more than the 50 or so folks who currently take advantage of scholarships might take advantage of it. One of the real benefits of the program, I think, is that it is citywide. It's not tied to a particular facility or a particular program. So a city resident could take a class of their choosing wherever it's offered in the city.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other clarifying questions?
Yeah, to piggyback off of that question, actually, are there any restrictions on the types of classes that this can be applied to?
The only restrictions that we have are ones for rentals. Is that correct, Todd? I don't think we're allowing it for like someone who's renting a facility to offer a class. There's not a lot of those in the program. I think maybe Kuksul is the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, Kuksul is the biggest. And you're right. It's only for classes, not for rentals.
Okay, and that would apply for like the tennis court key as well, that type of amenity. Excuse me.
That's a good question. Well, actually, let me think through this. So the program is going to be open to 0 to 18. Is that right, Nick? Or I forget if it goes to the older groups, adults as well.
I think it's adult. I think it's any age. We were proposing to the city council some free classes for kids 0 to 18, but this is a separate program.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I need to just confused with different ages in my head. We had not talked about the tennis key program specifically. I think we should probably talk with Sean about that, because it's not a class per se, but it's not really a program either. It's kind of out there on its own. I think we need to have it's a good discussion point.
Okay. Just a couple more questions that I had. So you said that the total cost, if the 100 families who qualify end up actually receiving the scholarship, would be about $30,000 for the city because of the split cost with instructors. So I assume that means instructors would be reimbursed a little less than they would otherwise. Is there any concern about instructor retention or anything in that department?
No, it's the same amount. It's just that there's always that 60-40 split is the same split for every class. The instructor gets 60% of the class fee and the city gets 40% of the class fee. So this is, and it's actually not a cost to the city in that it's lost revenue, I guess you could say.
One other thing I'll clarify too that people may think of, we have 2 very robust sports leagues that are inside for kids. It would not apply to the youth basketball or volleyball league because those fees are paid. If those schools charge a fee, it's charged by the school, not by the city. We charge a team fee, but we do not. But the schools charge individual fees. So those would be not part of the program.
Okay, thank you both. Yeah, it sounds like a great program. I mean, as much as we can extend it to all those who would qualify, that'd be great.
That's good to know. And thank you for clarifying. When you said citywide, I wasn't sure if that meant just anything or things that the city is actually offering. So that helps. When it comes to what have I done? Am I still there? Okay.
You're still there.
When it comes to qualifying, we have a certain program now that vets people, and I think I read that it's current paycheck and W-2. Is that the protocol?
It could be if we're doing an income limit, but often folks will have something else as proof of qualification, their participation in one of these other programs where they've already had the sort of income level check.
Yes.
People aren't looking to scam the community center out of, I don't expect that there will be any sort of attempts to game the system. It's just not something that really happens, and we want to be careful in how we popularize and publicize the program, not to give any sort of stigma attached to it, just to make it widely available and easy to apply for.
Thanks.
Any other, one other question I had about this was, would we be looking to launch this once all the offerings were reactivated? And would it be in conjunction because in the past, certain offerings would get, taken up very quickly. So would it kind of be in conjunction? Someone could say register for an offering and then get it and apply for the scholarship, or does it have, or for the money, or does it have to happen before that? When would we think about timing for this?
I think once you've applied for the program, you're in, so you could be in for subsequent activity guide cycles too. That's something we'd have to think about, Todd, is sort of how we time the applications, because I see what you're saying, Chair Baskin. You don't want people to like apply for a popular class, then find out about the scholarship, and then maybe miss out on their spot in the class because they're going through the paperwork to get to qualify for the scholarship program. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I agree, right? We come in a little late to this. I don't remember if there was discussion about that in the kind of the previous iterations, but one thing that we can certainly do with our registration system is we can register them for the class when they apply. And then for whatever reason, if they don't get it, we can then unregister them. And knowing that it's a very busy class, that'll fill right up. Like I think of gymnastics right away when that happens, right? If they're residents, they can sign up on the same day as all residents can sign up. And for some reason, if they don't qualify and they can't afford payment, then we could back them out.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And summer camps as well?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that it's a program that the city offers,
Mhm.
that Library and Community Services offers.
And especially like, you know, the way I've been thinking about this is anybody that lives in Bellhaven can now get scholarship classes at the Arc, and anybody that lives closer and normally would go to the Arc can now go to Bellhaven for classes, right? So one big difference is the price of camp is higher at MCC, right?
Mhm.
And where it's only $25 on the Bellhaven side. So people would have to choose to spend their money wisely, right? Because if you signed up for one camp, you might use up the bucket of money almost, you know, in one shot, so to speak. But you can certainly do it. Yeah.
Mhm. That's great. I love this idea for many reasons, one of which is a forefront, one of our pillars of One Menlo Park and equity and being able to connect all different areas of Menlo Park. So this is giving equity in a way for people to connect from all different areas to bring about our offerings. And then also we're coming out of a period where we haven't been able to use a great majority of the city offerings. And I think, you know, people of all ages have suffered from that. And we have some great offerings in our community. And so if this can help kickstart things, and I always think incentives and scholarships help bring people to support our offerings, I think it's a great idea. So I would be fully supportive in its nature. I guess, would you be looking for us to make a motion to recommend the scholarship program to this light is so weird in my face, to the city council at the next meeting?
Yeah, staff would appreciate that. And also with the knowledge that we will, should council approve the outlines of the scholarship program, that will be coming back to the Parks and Rec Commission to sort of iron out the details and let you know how it's proceeding going forward, and a check-in probably at the 6-month or 1 year period, just to let you guys know how it's going.
Great. So if I state this correctly, would anyone want to make a motion to approve the outline and recommendation from the staff on a citywide scholarship program, citywide need-based scholarship program?
I'll move that we recommend this to the city council.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
All right. So that's Commissioners Bryman and Diepenbrock motioning and seconding. Commissioner Payne, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. And Chair Baskin, how do you vote?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you very much. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Wonderful. So the next item is the recreation, no, we approved that one, is the recommendation to implement a pickleball court at Nealon Park.
Great. Give me a second here to get things started. So you see how smoothly Linda runs everything when I'm in charge.
You're doing fabulously, Nick.
Thank you, Chair Baskin.
These meetings have run very smoothly. It's been a seamless transition, so I applaud you.
Good. I doubt that it's that seamless, but thank you. I'm going to pull up the short presentation here, and Todd Zao, our recreation supervisor, will be making the presentation. So let me share my screen, and we'll start the slideshow. And Todd, whenever you're ready.
All right, so here is our pickleball update presentation, and Nick, you can slide forward, or do you need me to? There we go. Okay, so just a bit of background, which I think everybody is aware, but the Park and Rec Commission recommended a pickleball pilot program in September of 2020. We created a 6-month trial program over at Kelly Park. We started that in November, and tennis court 1 at Kelly Park was altered with pickleball lines, and a new key system was added to give players access to the court. And then the last thing that we did was we purchased equipment that was available for players to check out and use, so that they could play if they did not have equipment. So staff is recommending now that we restripe Nealon Court number 5 for pickleball. And Court 5, if you are aware, at Nealon is the single court. Courts 1 and 2 are together, 3 and 4 together. Court 5 is a standalone fenced-in court. So that will have that means you basically have no impact other than taking up the tennis court, but you're not going to be back and forth with the tennis court players as they play on a court right next to you. We are also recommending that you place on the June agenda for the results of the tennis court survey, and that we also reassess pickleball in 1 year's time to see if we need to think about increasing, decreasing, that type of thing. And then that was quick and simple, so we're opening it up for questions and comments and discussion.
Thank you very much, Todd. Thank you for your work, and I did see the survey that had been sent out earlier, so really appreciate all your work on this important topic. So at this point, since the presentation is done, I will be asking for public comments. I do notice that we have a larger number of participants. I'm assuming that want to make a comment for this. If I could just see, using the raise hand function, the participants, the attendees that do want to speak on this, it can kind of help gauge us. Yeah, so please use the raise hand function.
Again, the raised hand function is on your Zoom screen, or if you're dialing in, you can use *9 on your phone to electronically raise your hand.
Jennifer, I have one question.
Yes.
Maybe this, I don't know if this is more appropriate for after public comment or before, but the presentation was very lacking in a lot of logisticals as far as time with the new courts, as far as, you know, how when they're gonna be used. Is it just drop in any time? Is there a priority? I mean, so I think those are a lot of things that the public are gonna want to discuss. I don't know if that's something that can be stated before that might help alleviate some
that's a great point. Maybe Todd, do you have some points to elaborate on that ahead of public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
So the pickleball court would be dedicated Nealon Court 5 would be dedicated solely to pickleball. So it would be open from the normal hours that the tennis courts are open, sunrise to 10 p.m. at night.
Okay.
So that you would have access to lights. And then, and again, we were playing with different versions of this. We are proposing that pickleball operate the same way that the tennis courts operate, so that all folks who wanted to play pickleball would buy a tennis court key that would give them access to all the tennis courts and the pickleball court. And that fee, forgive me off the top of my head because it used to be round numbers, but right now it's like $64 a year for residents, $130 for non-residents, and then it goes down by just about half coming up here on July 1st. For the second half of the year, we prorate that amount.
So just to be clear, Todd, if there are no pickleball players and the other 4 courts are being used for tennis and 2 tennis players show up, they can play tennis on court 5 until some pickleball people show up and say, hey, we want to play pickleball here. I mean, just trying to see what the plan is. You're muted. You're
just
muted.
muted yourself, Todd.
Sorry, I was gathering myself there. So yeah, that would be the case, right? So I guess I used the word exclusive use, and maybe that may have been a bit too much, because the court will be lined with pickleball courts, and it will be available for pickleball from all hours. But you're right, and my apologies. Tennis players, if they have a key, they can go on there and play following the normal rules, right? They have 1 hour. Everybody gets to the court for 1 hour. So the court will be available for both.
I see. Okay.
And I will say, just we at this point, we don't have the technology to differentiate that. If we could, we have a physical key system that they're good for one court, all courts.
Right.
And to clarify the way the nets work, so because there's an existing tennis court net there, and then just maybe I'm wrong about this, to restripe it for pickleball, wouldn't we be looking to have more pickleball games be available on there? Would there need to be more nets? Or am I incorrect in that?
Yeah, there would be 4 pickleball nets just off to the side when they're not being used.
So they're movable. That's more
Yeah,
my
yeah.
question. They're movable.
Yeah.
And reservations would work the same way too, right? Because currently any tennis user who would like to make a reservation can make a reservation. Also, you can make a pickleball reservation. It'd be the same system.
Yes, that's correct.
And to clarify further Peter's point, if the tennis courts are full, a couple group, whatever, comes to play tennis, and 5 is available, they're on 5 and they're playing, then a pickleball group shows up. They need to wait for them to finish. Is that correct? Or are they automatically off the court now because it's pickleball is the preference?
They will need to wait up to an hour because that's the time limit for play by any of the groups.
But Todd, if it's the other way around, do pickleball players need to get off after an hour if tennis players show up? No.
Wait. The way you
No.
said that was a little confusing to me. So if let's say it this way, if you're a pickleball player and you come onto the courts, you have the court for you and your partner or partners for 1 hour total. If you're a tennis player and you come on the court, you have the court for 1 hour for your match.
So you are saying that then that tennis players can kick pickleball players off after an hour.
Well, any player has access to the court after an hour. It's just a court rule, not what sport you play rule. Is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
that's
Correct.
a little that's a little tricky.
And that's what we're here to get the feedback and have discussions
Yeah,
about tonight.
yeah.
That's why we're talking in general about what the rules are. So
Well, and the other
the
thing that needs
discussion
to
is
be,
a good discussion.
yeah, and the other thing that needs to be stated very clearly is, first of all, it's very, very seldom that all 4 tennis courts are full. So that's just, we're talking about a very extreme situation here. So the other key question here, Todd, is there's 3 tennis courts available and there's people playing tennis on court 5. Can it be said, hey, you need to move to one of the open tennis courts so we can play pickleball and we don't need to wait an hour? That's another, I think, key point that needs to be clarified.
Good point. That's a very good point that we'll have to work on.
Well, I think at this point, if we've clarified some of the questions here, I see we do have 12 attendees. You know, in the interest of giving everyone a fair time to speak and also not being here super long and to be able to discuss this afterwards, I'd like to limit our public comment to 2 minutes apiece. And we would like to invite everyone who wants to speak on this agenda item to have the open floor to speak on it.
Great. So at this point, if you would still like to make a public comment, engage that raise hand feature. And I'll call on you in the order of my screen here. So whenever you guys are ready, we can start to take some public comment. I got a little timer here. I know it's very fancy. So our first public commenter is Ron Friedman. And Ron, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and start your comment.
Okay, thank you. I've unmuted myself and my comments follow. So I am a 20-something year resident of Menlo Park, and I enjoy living here. And I've taken up pickleball about 3 years ago, but the only place that I can play that's within a reasonable distance and we can find a game is Mitchell Park in Palo Alto. Menlo Park is competing with Mitchell Park in Palo Alto for pickleball players. Mitchell Park in Palo Alto has 8 dedicated pickleball courts and about 6 non-dedicated pickleball courts. Peter, you can set the record straight if my numbers are wrong. And what the wonderful thing is at Mitchell Park is people can just show up there and pick up a game. You don't have to reserve a court with 4 people. You just show up and you can play anytime. And there's 50 or 60 people playing at Mitchell Park at any given time. It's amazing. So my sense is if you need to have, in order to attract pickleball players, you need to have dedicated pickleball courts that pickleball players can know that there will be other people there at the same time and they can pick up a game, and you'd be amazed how many people will show up. I cede the rest of my time.
Thank you very much for your comment. Sorry, it takes me a little while to work through this. Our next commenter is JD Tapp. JD, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and address the commission.
Okay, a couple things. First of all, the lines can't be black, and okay, forget that. So limiting us to an hour, that's never going to happen because people are going to come and go, and so the tennis players are never going to be able to have their hour because it's going to be 16 people on and off. You see what I'm saying? And so there's never going to be the same people on for an hour. So I think you just need to make it dedicated to us, period. And the tennis people are we're going to be on there the whole time. We don't leave. We play for hours and hours and hours. So giving the option of tennis, they're going to be fights. They're going to think that we're not getting off, and they're not going to recognize that it's different people coming on and off. So I think Ron's right. Make it just pickleball or there's going to be a problem. Also, what's it called? The thing we play over, the net. You guys made it 2 inches too big at Kelly Park, and 2 inches is huge. So whoever chooses the line, check with whoever is a pickleball player, like check Peter's a pickleball player. Before you do anything, please check with a pickleball player, because I can tell by your questions, you guys aren't pickleball players, and you're gonna make mistakes when you paint the lines black. That was a huge mistake. You can't see them. And so before you do anything, check with a pickleball player before you make decisions. And again, Ron's right, make it just dedicated to pickleball players, because if you build it, we will come in hordes. And also we're very friendly. So when people watch, we will hand them our paddles, and you will see it's very fun, and everybody will stop and want to play. Just watch. The whole thing's going to turn into pickleball. I hope there's no tennis players here. Okay, done.
Thank you for your comments. I would just ask that everyone speak kindly on this. We're all here to do great things for the community. And I just want everyone to approach all topics we talk about with kindness, and that we're here to all work together and try to come to a commonality and a good solution. Sorry, Nick, you may continue.
No worries. I need that long just to figure out what I'm doing. So thank you for giving me a little bit of a break there. Our next public commenter is Jim Carson. Jim, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, you can address the commission.
Hello, I'm Jim Carson, a Menlo Park resident, tennis player, and pickleball player. First, thank you. We've been trying real hard to get access to Neyland Park, and we appreciate very much what the commission has done. I think other things have been covered fairly well. The thing I might address is the tennis key fee, because we're now trying to reach a different segment of Menlo Park geographically that maybe haven't gone to Kelly Park, where we waived the fees for the pickleball trial. So I propose we waive the fees again for a while at Neyland Park to encourage non-tennis key holders and newcomers that haven't tried pickleball and would like to give it a shot but not pay $62 up front just to play one time and maybe say they don't like it. So I would strongly propose that we have a fee waiver. I think the little amount of fees we may lose during that waiver period will be made up many-fold after the end of the year when we get new keys for next year, because we have a big group of avid pickleball players and enthusiasts. I think that's it. Again, thank you very much. We appreciate what the commission has done.
Thank you very much for your comment, Jim. Our next commenter is Carol Dressler. Carol, you can unmute yourself and address the commission.
I've lived in Menlo Park 12 years. I'm a tennis player as well as a pickleball player. And first of all, I also want to echo the comments. I really appreciate the efforts that's gone into this, Peter, but the whole commission, to even create a trial, monitor the trial, think about alternatives of what we can do. I think people will be thrilled that we have that court. I've been listening carefully because I've been involved with the rules at the Mitchell Park Court. And one thing that has happened is we've made the courts available till 3 for pickleball. And what we might consider is doing that for this single court, because I think the comments that we've heard already, there is kind of a collective feeling about people coming and dropping in. And if we just had it exclusively for pickleball until say 3 o'clock, if that's a usage barrier or time, that might be helpful in the beginning. I like the idea of waiving the fee for 6 months. Some people don't know how to get the key or whatever, and I have one because of tennis. But I just think it's wonderful that you are asking for input, and I think we're going to learn a lot the first 6 months, and hopefully we can keep coming back and refining whatever rules we put in place.
Thanks very much for your comment, Carol. Now I will painstakingly go to the next person. Thank you for bearing with me. The next person who would like to make comment is Allison Elliott. Allison, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and address the commission.
Thanks, Nick. Well, I will basically echo a lot of what already has been said. I've lived in Menlo Park for 30 years, but I haven't played tennis here. but I took up pickleball several years ago and have been delighted with the access and generosity at Palo Alto, where they've made many courts available and had classes through the rec program for kids, also encouraging, family play. What I'd like to suggest is that there are a lot of towns, certainly Palo Alto is ahead of us for several years, and you can learn a lot about what they've done, what's worked. I think if you go and look at their courts, they have beautiful permanent courts, but they also have some courts that are overlaid on the tennis court. As Carol said, they share those courts with tennis players through a time allocation. And when I've been there, I haven't seen any conflict because there's plenty of other tennis courts where the tennis players are playing. So I think the suggestions here are good, but I think I'd like to suggest that you might want to speak to people who run the program at Palo Alto or Mountain View, where they have several courts there as well. And so they've worked out some of these details. But thank you to the commission, and I'm looking forward to being able to play in Menlo Park. And I'd also like to put a plug in for permanent courts. So you probably haven't heard the last of us. Thanks, I'm done.
All right, Allison, thank you very much for your comment. Our next commenter is Susan Earhart. Susan, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can address the commission.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify whether the court at Kelly Park would remain usable for pickleball, or if the court at Nealon Park will be the only one in Menlo Park for that purpose.
I think I can answer that one. And the answer is that the Kelly Park court would go back to tennis, and the Nealon Park court would be pickleball. Oops, I'm wasting your time with my talking. The idea being that the Nealon Park courts are much more frequently used, which is what we learned from the tennis survey. And the pilot program at Kelly Park was just meant to be a pilot program. And from the results of the tennis survey, it seemed like Nealon Park Court 5 was the best solution for a more permanent pickleball installation. Sorry, Susan, did you have any other further comment or questions?
No, I appreciate that. I would just say that, sometimes transportation across the city is a little difficult, so it makes it difficult for people on this side of 101 to be able to get to Nealon Park to play.
Thank you, Susan, for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? There is, please use that raise hand function. All right, Chair Baskin.
So at this,
go ahead.
Great, thank you. At this point, I'd like to open, I see we have a raised hand. Okay, with Peter, I'd like to open it up to discussion and clarifying questions. I see Peter has this hand raised, so we can start with you, Peter. As our pickleball player on commission. You're on mute, Peter.
Yeah, a couple things. So I guess, Nick, my first question is, having pickleball court lines on the tennis court at Kelly Park doesn't cost anything. I mean, they're there. So I don't understand, why not just keep them there? I mean, what's the problem with just keeping them there? I mean, they're down. I mean, they're there. I don't understand that.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, totally agree with that, Peter. We don't not argue that at all. What I will say is that the Bellhaven childcare and summer camps, because they're moving over to portables at the back of Kelly Park, they have a need and a plan to use the court one this summer, because court one, they have to use court one because of sight lines with childcare, and they have to be able to see them from the portables. That does go away at the end of the summer, though. But I will tell you that this summer they have a need to be using that court in their plan.
Right, but does the pickleball lines down there affect them at all?
No, they're going to be on the court using it during summer camp during the day.
Oh, sure. No, I understand it being not available, but I don't see any need for erasing the pickleball lines.
No, and I don't think I have not heard that there's any plan to erase the lines.
Okay.
So I, that is probably where Nick and Sean have discussed, not that like the trial was going to end, but we certainly haven't had any discussions beyond that period of time past the summer about what could be available.
Okay, so that's one thing. The next point is, I think maybe from some public comments, you've kind of got a feel for what is going to happen here, but I just want to tell you and make it very clear, because this is a very, very important conversation we're going to have right now because of just the tennis player pickleball combination, and we need to be crystal clear, moving forward on how it's going to work. And like Allison said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Palo Alto has been dealing with this for the last 4 or 5 years, and I can just tell you, like one of the people said, it has worked very, very well, where this sport has priority during this time, this sport has priority during this time. So if pickleball's playing there during tennis time and a tennis player shows up and the other courts are full, then the tennis gets it. If pickleball, it's a priority time for pickleball, like she said, 8 a.m. till 3, and the tennis player happens to be playing on there and pickleball players show up, then the tennis players kindly move. That has worked very well over at Mitchell Park. And I think, and like the other caller said, pickleball is very different from tennis, in how it works. It's so much more social. We're talking about 16 people, on the court as opposed to 2 or 4. And it is just kind of, like they said, an ongoing, old school, just drop in and play. And so the whole idea of doing it hour by hour just doesn't fit the pickleball culture. So I just think that's very important to note as we try to figure out some of these details here.
Your insight is super helpful, Peter. I do think that is a key point, that we should try to create an environment that level sets for everyone, because it will be a new thing. And so I do want to say one piece, because I live extremely close to Nealon Park, and we look to play. They're all different hours of the day. And my experience has been far different there, that the courts are very full a lot of the times that we're there. And we're there at all different times. And we live a stone's throw away, is my point to this. But I do agree that I want to see success, and I want everyone to be as happy as they can be. And so because of the nature of the play, that it is very different, and it's not one that, okay, here's your turn and your turn is done.
Right.
I think us guiding staff to set some hourly guides on it and say, this is when pickleball can have preference during these hours. We have some sort of form of communication. So something that goes out online, via email, next door, posted there. We would like to have something posted there.
so that we don't have discord amongst our community and arguments there. Because I find even like the perfect example is Jim Hebner runs his tennis program there. And sometimes you're on courts, I believe that's 1 and 2, and all of a sudden Jim shows up with a lesson and you're kind of disappointed that you just started playing for 10 minutes and he's had this reserved for how long, but you don't really know. And he has sort of a small little, handwritten sign of when he's going to be there. But I think that we could create some nice signage that can be, at least permanent during this trial, to see how this works and see how people follow that. Because again, you're not going to, whether you're going to call the Menlo Park police if someone doesn't come off, but if there's enough communication done and clarity around it, then at least people can feel comfortable with the change that's being made and welcome it and be accommodating. Because I do think it's ridiculous. I would hope to think there's no one in Menlo Park, 2 tennis players who are playing on that court when there are other open courts, that wouldn't move to another open court for pickleball. That just seems ridiculous and outside the spirit of sport in general. But I understand what you're saying. So I do think that that's a key point, us kind of determining the right hour usage. And I think, like you said, 8 a.m. to whatever time in the afternoon makes sense. And and having input from someone like yourself who plays pickleball to show what the net size and the line, so that we're doing it right the first time.
Sure.
And I do have a little bit, I would like to ask, staff their idea on the key. That there was one comment about fees. I think the kneel-on courts are very widely used by a lot of people. They were just redone. We've spent a lot of money. We've talked about this in Nealon Park with both the fields and the courts being redone, that I do think that we have a very, very low fee for park usage and for tennis court. Well, we have no fee for park usage, and we have a very low tennis court key fee that I just think it would be tough to say, like, we're going to increase usage by a lot and by a lot of hours of the day and not charge at all. So that one I'd like us to think about a little bit too, because I don't know if that's a great long-term solution. Any other comments? I think, Mark, you have your hand raised as well.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. I happen to be a tennis player, and exclusively, if you will, to borrow a phrase, a tennis player. It just so happens that court number 5 is the preferred court because it's a singular court. And I think that based on what Allison's comment it's true. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel. We should check with other programs. I hesitate to constantly go back to the Palo Alto model. Palo Alto is a municipality that's roughly what, double the size of Menlo Park? Is that about right? How many total parks do they have? They may have 2 or 3 times as many parks and 2 or 3 times as many tennis courts. The idea of exclusivity for pickleball, I think, is a great idea. I just think we have to figure out where it is. And if this is going to be a pilot program, or is it a pilot program? Are we going to provide equipment for people? I'm wondering, because I know that tennis players bring their own stuff. The nets are there, the lines are drawn, yes. Kelly, we made equipment available to people. Are we making equipment available to people at Nealon?
Maybe we already have the same equipment available. Yeah.
Well, we already have some. I don't think it's a tremendous amount of rackets and balls that we were lending out through the curbside pickup at the library.
The other thing is, and Peter brought it up, but we can't forget that one tennis court is 4 pickleball courts, correct? So the likelihood of a tennis player coming in when there's no one there, if there are 4 different pickleball courts, right, it's very likely that at least one of them is going to be used. Well, then that does not enable a person to play tennis. And so therefore that, right, I mean, I think the delineation or the time frame thing is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I know that the pickleball players want specificity and they want exclusivity. I get that. Why wouldn't you? And I think long-term, it's probably a good idea. And maybe eventually the city should build exclusive pickleball courts. But right now, I'm not so sure that we should be dedicating. Look, the reason the pickleball people in my mind want to be in Nealon Park is because it's a prime location. That's why we fixed the tennis courts. And that's why, as Jennifer said correctly, they're full. I go there often and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. So for Peter, for you to suggest that they rarely get used is just not accurate. It's just not an accurate.
No, not that they're rarely used. It's just been my observation. So I drove by there for every single day for a month, and I wrote down how many times in 31 days that all 5 courts were being used. And again, in my observations, it was the month of from September to October, literally 3 or 4 times all 5 courts were being used. So that's just my experience. So I'm not saying they're not used. I'm saying that all 5 at the same time are very rarely used. And the other point real quick, Mark, is that, again, I just want to make sure that we're clear. This is a big deal. I mean, this is a big, big deal. And checking back in a year is not the right move here. I think this should be addressed literally 3 months, 2 months. I mean, we should address this because I mean, there's going to be a lot of action there. There's going to be a lot of action. A lot of stuff's going to come up. And I don't think we should wait a year to address it.
So with that said, I think Peter's probably right. Why don't we shorten the time frame and make it exclusive? I mean, I hate to lose court 5, but court 5 is a pickleball, 4 pickleball courts. There is no tennis on court 5 for 3 months or 6 months, 4 months, whatever it is. And we really give it a shot, and we get an idea how overwhelmingly popular it's going to be. And that's what we're being told, that
right.
I'm not going to be able to keep my children at home because they're going to be playing pickleball. I get it. That's great.
Yeah. And then again, if there are tennis, it doesn't mean tennis players can't play on it. It just means that if pickleball players happen to come, that the tennis players have to move to one of the other courts. And Jennifer, Mark brings up a great point that they're, obviously tennis players prefer to have that single court, where the ball's not going all the way over to the double court situation. So it is, obviously the preferred court. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a great idea, Mark. See how it goes.
But let's do contact the other municipalities that seem to have these programs going and talk to some of those community leaders or whatever that are running those programs and try to learn from their mistakes.
So I can tell you that's a very good idea, Mark. All of my counterparts in our group we call Sancra. It starts in Menlo Park and it goes up to Brisbane. The majority of those cities have pickleball programs. Redwood City, San Carlos, San Mateo, Burlingame. So I can get feedback and the way they run things pretty simply.
Good idea. Thank you.
Todd, was there any kind of plan as far as when to put the lines down? Is there any timeline on that yet?
Nick and I and Sean talked about this briefly yesterday. We have not really made a plan to timeline to put the lines down. We didn't know, without knowing if the recommendation was going to be accepted tonight, we didn't want to jump the gun on that. What I will say is that it's probably not the length, probably not a PO bidding process that we have to do. But the busy part is all the tennis court guys that do lines and resurfacing are very busy in the summer. And I know this from our experience doing all of our other courts. So it's going to be finding somebody that fits us in, that can fit us in a timely fashion. That could be the biggest hindrance. So we can start working on it, right away.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Did we discuss, was there any cost associated or raised?
There'd be a small cost for restriping and buying nets, but Todd, you can speak to that a little more.
I didn't look, but if I remember right, it was $4,000 to restripe the lines. So give or take 4,000 will be the right amount. The net's another few hundred. Yeah.
And then, sorry, one other thing. And then I had one of the comments, Kelly Court, they left the door unlocked. There are no plans to leave the tennis court 5 door unlocked, correct? It would require a key usage.
The staff proposal is to treat the pickleball court the same as we treat the tennis courts, and to require at least one player would have to have a key.
Yes, likely just one. Agreed. Thank you for the clarifications. Anyone else have any other questions or?
Well, I would just like to see if, I don't know how this would work, if we could, I don't know, vote or come to some sort of agreement on Mark's suggestion, to, shorten the period and have it exclusively pickleball and get back to it in 3 or 6 months and see where we're at.
Just to raise a point. So what I talked about with the keys, if we're using a key, as is proposed by staff, it's one key fits all keys for all courts in the city. So we're going to have to figure out another, if the proposal is to recommend that it be exclusive, then staff would have to do something different. The idea would be perhaps take the tennis court net down. If that would be one way that if we made it exclusive, tennis players in essence wouldn't want to be on the courts because it doesn't have a net.
I'm much better at the game when there's no net. Let me just say that.
We all are.
That's actually a low cost, easy solution to do to make it exclusive. But I will say, if it's an evening play, that could limit usage. And I don't like the idea of 2 different types of keys. Is that what you were trying to bring up? Because I think it's one key for all courts around the city makes sense. You have someone that plays tennis and pickleball, they should just have one key.
Yeah, just one key.
Yeah, so Todd, I didn't understand your point there about the keys. I didn't understand that. Can you say it again?
Yeah, so Peter, I think there's 15 tennis courts total in the city. If you buy a key, it works on all 15 courts.
Right. So how does that relate to the pickleball court? I don't understand.
So we were talking about making it exclusive.
Yeah.
If you have a tennis key right now and we change it to pickleball, you would still be able to go on there anytime that you wanted.
Sure.
as a tennis player.
Sure. And I think to lessen the tennis player resentment, they still should be able to go on there. I don't think taking the net down. I mean, if there's no pickleball players there and the other court, I mean, tennis players should be able to play, I think that's the best way to do it. And to be honest, the tennis net helps a lot to separate the 4 pickleball courts too. It's kind of a key barrier there. So yeah, we should be able to work together. And it's like, hey, okay, tennis players know that if they're on there, they are, at the behest of, pickleball players could be showing up and they might have to move on to one of the other courts. But I still think they should be able to use it if there's no pickleball players. Yeah.
As Jennifer suggested, if it's clearly posted, and that's not going to be a high barrier to entry, right? We can put a few signs up there and laminate them or whatever, so that should there be a confrontation, they simply say, well, there it is. There's the sign.
Right.
I have yet to see a confrontation there when someone has walked in and said they've reserved it, and someone's not walking around with an email or a receipt, and or if Jim Hebner has come in and said, I had a lesson, and he has, he pays for that too, he reserves it. So I've yet to see that. So I think signage will go a long way.
Agreed.
But Jennifer, to your point, I also looked at that survey, and we went through the time and energy to do that survey. And if you recall, one of the most common complaints on the survey was private tennis lessons, right? I mean, so what about addressing that? I mean, is there anything we can do? Like you said, I mean, these tennis lessons come and they take these courts hours on end. It's the same thing at Palo Alto. Is there anything we can do to address that? And that's a pretty large complaint. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd say, yes, there is, and we should probably put it on the agenda for next meeting so it's properly noticed. So if tennis players or other people want to come and talk about that, they can join in on the discussion. Yeah.
And just one thing I'll add is that the current policy for reserving a court throughout the city is that no more than 50% of the courts can be reserved at a given time. So, and at Nealon, because we have 5 courts, we never reserve more than 2 courts. I will also say that where there is a rogue tennis instructor problem that every city has, where they don't call ahead to make lessons. We can't, that's hard. That's a hard one to deal with.
Okay.
To make some movement on this, given I think we're kind of agreeing on one, trying out for a shorter period of time, be it 3 or 4 months, an exclusive pickleball signed, it doesn't have to be fancy right now, but at least some form of communication on our web, front facing website and at the court, dedicated pickleball on court 5. The times you mentioned were 8 to 3. Does that seem to be the time that was presented prior to Kelly Park, or that's just something that your observation people want to play during that time?
Well, Mark was saying have it be all the time, priority for pickleball all the time if we're going to do it, and see what the interest is.
Okay, I think that's a great idea for a time period that's a bit shorter, that we're coming back to it again, 3 to 4 months, not 6 months from now.
Right. Yeah.
And we wouldn't start the trial time period until we actually got everything striped and set up, of course.
Agreed.
And Nick, to that point, Todd, to that point, like I said, I mean, I've been working with, Palo Alto on this. I have a lot of experience on this. I would, to that one caller's point, would like to offer my services as a pickleball consultant when we, look to buy the nets, when we put the lights, the lines down, the direction that the courts are. There's a lot of decisions, that are really, really important that need to be made. How many of the tennis lines do you already use versus putting down extra line? I mean, it's a lot of decisions, and And to be honest, with Kelly, it just kind of happened. And I would definitely, then people can just, yell at me if it's not to their liking, because there just are a lot of very key decisions that need to be made. So
we'll put your number on the sign there, Peter.
Yeah, exactly.
Would I, in one question that I have, would one of the signs then need to be that, because we're saying that pickleball has priority at all times of the day, would one of the signs have to say something to the effect of, if pickleball player arrives during tennis player has to get off the court?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. This is a pickleball priority court. Yeah.
By the way, back to tennis for just a sec. One of the reasons 5 is a court of choice is not just because it's singular, but because of the direction that it goes. It's the only court, it goes in a different direction. So the sun, when you're playing, you often need to, so Peter's point about the directionality of the thing is appreciated, because that's one of the reasons that court is a priority. So
well, exactly, Mark, because that's exactly what I was going to say. That court goes north-south, and that's the way you would like it to go. Exactly. The east-west really gets brutal in the afternoon with the sun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I haven't said much because I feel extremely unqualified to comment on too much, as neither a pickleball player or a tennis player, but I definitely agree in terms of as much communication and signage as is possible. Sounds like the best way to go to prevent, as much disruption. And I did scroll through the survey as well, and it did seem like there's already a lot of, sentiment out there that there aren't enough courts available as is. So, hoping for a smooth pilot for this. But I was actually wondering if the city has like the email addresses, I assume, of everyone who has a key, and that maybe even direct communication can happen in that way, so that there's not, in addition to the sign and everything else, but that there's a heads up directly to the tennis players.
That's a great idea. And yes, we do have the email addresses for the folks who gave us email addresses for the tennis key holders.
And then and then
I think
also
something going out in Menlo on the website under the Parks and Recreation, and we all got the email on COVID reopenings and things like that. So there could be a number of forms of communication.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how much people will necessarily read that, but I think if it went directly to the key holders, maybe it would be more likely to be read in advance.
True. And along those same lines, just to announce that that pickleball is available, and let people know that we have this new opportunity. Yeah.
I think what Dana is saying makes great sense. If we can go directly to the people we know are playing and using those courts to communicate that, hey, guess what? This is a new thing that we're doing. It's only going to clarify or help clarify.
Yeah.
Let me just ask one more question, though. There's some discussion about them pickleball players not having to buy a key. Is that now off the table? Where there are plenty of tennis players who don't have keys. You play with somebody, and only one person needs a key, right? So, are we on that same page?
I am.
Okay.
So Nick and Todd, at this point, have we given you enough to work with, or are we looking to make a recommendation?
Well, let me see if I can capture what I've heard. And then if it sounds good to you, great. If not, correct me. And then I would say, at that point, when it gets refined enough, make a motion and a vote to recommend a course of action. And so what I've heard is that we would like an exclusive signed and noticed pickleball court on Nylon number 5. We're going to leave the tennis net up, but that the court would have priority, pickleball players would have priority on that court. So tennis players could use it, but only if no other pickleball players were there. And if pickleball players showed up, then the tennis court player would have to go to another available tennis court if possible. They would have to leave the pickleball court because that court is when it is exclusive. I don't want to say exclusively, but it is primarily for the use of pickleball players. Is that correct?
If there are no other tennis courts available, what would happen then?
And they go to Burgess.
They must leave. Okay.
And that's what I heard from the commission. Not that you wanted to have sort of an hours exclusivity, like 8 to 3 is exclusively pickleball, and then 3 to 10 is.
Well, maybe in 3 or 4 months we get. Maybe in 3 or 4 months we get there, but right now we're just starting with purely pickleball.
And I'd like to put this again as, because it's new and it's a big change. I would like this to be a trial, say 3 months from when we get it going, and we revisit it in 3 months and tell people that we're doing that, so that we can see observe if there can be a time to it, so that evening play can be dedicated to something else, or if it needs to be that way the whole time and we're revisiting it much sooner.
Yeah.
I think it's important too that we let those tennis players know that if there are no other courts available, they're out of luck.
Well, or they're waiting on the other 4 courts as they would have waited with 5 courts anyway. So it's,
well, whatever. They have to leave. They whether there is another court available or not, they cannot stay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that this is good that we're doing this with a 3-month time period, because if the tennis community is, has feelings about that, then we are addressing it in a much more timely fashion, and that any discord amongst the 2 groups will be handled in a more timely fashion too.
Agreed.
If there is. And maintaining the locked tennis court as well, given that they are brand new tennis courts, just redone, just spent money to do that.
All right. So what I heard was a 3-month trial of priority pickleball use at Nealon number 5. Revisit in 3 months after the striping and changes are put in place. Physical signs on the court, outreach to by direct email to tennis key holders to notify them that this change is coming, as well as other ways of publicizing the change, city website, city newsletter, whatever other ways we can think of to get to our users. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think also, I'm not familiar with the reservation system, but making sure to block the reservation system for Court 5 once this does roll out for tennis players. Not to add to the frustration for those who don't read the emails.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
we will do that in-house, no problem. Peter, one question that I would have then that brings up is, so would pickleball players make a reservation for a court so that they have an exclusive time to be on there, so that they're equal to the tennis player? Because the tennis player can do that, but there's 4 courts on the one tennis court. So
yeah, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in Palo Alto. They're just Palo Alto doesn't allow you to reserve them, so it is different, but I don't see that being an issue. I don't see pickleball people reserving the court. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, I guess maybe in 3 months we could address it, but yeah, I don't see that being an issue.
okay.
And staff also made a recommendation that the commission take up the results of the tennis user survey in June if you'd like, or at some time in the near future to address some of the issues that were raised by the participants in that tennis court user.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So if we agree with Nick's summary, may I have a motion to move forward and approve the summary of the pickleball program at Nealon Park, 3-month program exclusive to pickleball users, signage describing the exclusivity, 3-month program still requiring a key, and the additional work and striping, and Peter committing himself as a consultant to help make this an efficient process as well.
Let's be clear. It's not exclusivity, it's prioritization, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Sorry.
Correct.
Yes, that's a good correction. Prioritization.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The court, yes, the tennis net will still be up. Absolutely.
Yeah, I motion. Yeah.
And do we have a second?
I'll second the summary.
All right. Commissioner Diepenbrock made the motion. Commissioner Bryman seconded. Commissioner Payne, how do you vote?
In favor.
And Chair Baskin, how do you vote?
In favor.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much for a great conversation.
Thank you for all your work. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Nick. And it's ongoing. So thanking you in advance too.
Thank you.
So next up, we have some informational items. You all have the staff reports. So I think the first one is the department update, the COVID-19 recovery. I saw that also went out via email. So we got a sneak peek at that as community members too. Were there any highlights you wanted to raise with us, or did anyone have any questions on this?
No.
Happy to answer questions if anyone has any questions to the best of my ability. I'm still learning the community services side of the shop, so I'll do my best.
My only question was with the library reopening. I think I'm probably getting the number wrong, but I think it said in the beginning it would be at 40% capacity or somewhere, or I'm sorry, 40% hours of operation.
It's actually, I guess, more like 60% hours. It's 40 hours a week. So it's right now we are proposing Tuesday through Saturday with evening hours on 3 days and that 1 weekend day, Saturday. So probably something like 12 to 8, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then 10 to 6 on Friday and Saturday, both at the main and the branch.
Okay. And is that for sort of the foreseeable future, or is there a plan to return to previous hours?
Well, there were a lot of cutbacks in the last fiscal year. And so that's what we think we can provide with the level of staff that we have right now. The city council is having a public budget workshop on June the 1st, and then the budget hearing is on June the 8th. So if we get direction from council based on the feedback they hear at those 2 meetings to add resources, we basically, the staff proposed for the budget sort of, here's what we can do with the staff we have now, and then here's like a menu of options for the city council to choose from for doing any sort of service level enhancement. And included in that service level enhancement request were, let's see, 7, 8, 9 full-time equivalent positions for library and community services departments. So there were service level enhancements proposed to the city council.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work on that update. Next, we have the Parks and Recreation tentative agenda calendar. So I do have a couple of notes on that. We can add, obviously, to the June meeting is we'll have the tennis survey results, and we can have a conversation, discussion on that. So we could add that to June. And then we could put it for under the unscheduled future items would be to revisit the 3-month revisit of the Nealon pickleball program. So we'll put it as unscheduled just on the basis of when it kicks off.
Just a reminder that you have at least one new member who was appointed to the city council at their meeting last night.
Oh, fantastic.
So we'll be welcoming that member. I think they'll probably be sworn in and have their Brown Act training by the time of the commission's June meeting. So we have at least one, and there may be more. I think they were planning to ask some of the applicants who were not successfully appointed to other commissions, whether they were interested in some of the remaining vacancies. But I know we have at least one new member appointed.
Do we have a name we can share?
His name is, where did it go? Here we go. Peter Joshua.
Oh, great. And the other, the other highlight we added is Parks Tour. So I think I don't even know if Mark and Peter were able to even have a Parks Tour, because I think it's been gone from the agenda for a couple of years and definitely not available last year. So we'll see if that still works for our July meeting. And normally we do take August off. So September could be more packed. But does anyone see any other items here that they would like to add?
When are we revisiting the this latest thing that we decided, the pickleball review?
We are putting it down in the unscheduled future items because we don't want to put a month to it until the courts are restriped and then we know it's 3 months.
Right. Okay.
So we kind of that's our collection of items.
Did Sean say that we were going to have an agenda item to discuss maybe some disc golf in one of the parks?
That was one.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let's add that under scheduled future items, and what we can do, because I think he wanted to do some research on it first.
Okay.
So at our next planning meeting, we can see where they stand with that, because I believe he took that as a takeaway from our last meeting. It's a good catch.
All right.
Great.
So noted.
Thank you. And next we have Commissioner Bryman's individual commissioner report. So happy to hear what thoughts you have, Commissioner.
Well, part of me would like to wait, only in the fact that there are fewer of us, and this is kind of a call to action in a way. But I'll forge ahead. I was trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to discuss, or at least look into, and the one thing that I'm feeling pretty passionate about these days is the concept of revitalizing our downtown. And I've come up with a thought wherein we create what's called the Santa Cruz Avenue Park. This would be an extension, if you will, of Fremont, but it would be sort of an urban park. We would plant things and maybe even have a little amphitheater kind of a thing, but it basically would be sort of a park / pedestrian mall for Santa Cruz Avenue. I know it's a much bigger discussion. It's something that Mayor Combs, when he was here, we discussed a little bit. But I've been looking into it, and there are 2 or 3 across the country that have been very, very successful. And I think it's something that I don't know. I guess maybe using this platform as a Parks and Recreation Commission, maybe that's where I'm thinking about it. It would include much more than just a few planters. Obviously, this is something that we would have to embrace as a city. But I think it, especially as we're coming out of this time of COVID, it would do much of what parks do, which is to create the ability for people to socialize and to revitalize some of the retail, in my mind. But we would have to address parking issues. I think that there's a much bigger issue, which is sort of the vibrancy issue. What comes first? Stores don't want to open until there are people there. People don't want to be there until there are better stores. And so it's kind of a chicken or the egg sort of a thing. That said, I think we have a huge affordable housing and housing issue in general. And I think that we as a city should be thinking about housing, not just creating funds wherein people can kind of plant money and we do nothing with the fund, which has been the case for a long time. But we actually build housing downtown, and that helps revitalize, that creates more retail and lends to the vibrancy that we're discussing. So again, my thinking, from at least a jumping off point based on my time here on the commission, is that I would like to start maybe a subcommittee to look into this concept of creating Santa Cruz Avenue as a park, wherein it's an urban park, if you will. We're not, it's not becoming a big grass area, but we're having, there's more planting and there's pots and things, and maybe there are ping pong tables, bocce ball, who knows what kind of thing that we may be able to create there, which is going to bring people to the area, and then they can play, they can shop, they can live, they can work, they can play. And the core of our center of our city. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. I've spoken to some of the council people about the concept. I think Mayor Combs and our meeting when he was here said, Mark, he didn't say Mark, he said, I don't want to spend $30 million on a parking garage when cars are a thing of the past. Well, agreed. I don't think that it should be completely on the shoulders of the city, but we should lead. And I'm not so sure that cars are a thing of the past. We can put charging stations in them, and we can centralize where those cars go. We can direct traffic in such a way that, and I've talked to plenty of retailers. Yes, many of them would like customers to be able to park right inside the store. I mean, right in front of the store or right next to the store. But it seems to me that if we do this the right way as a city, again, from this perspective as Parks and Rec, if it's the concept of Santa Cruz Avenue as a park, as a social, as a place to, where we can beautify, we can create more social activity, lecture series, maybe more music offerings that are not just put on individual restaurants to come up with, hiring a band or not. Anyway, these are just some of my thoughts. It's a big fish, but I think we need to start somewhere. And I would like to suggest that, I'd hope that maybe there's some other commissioners who may be interested in kind of a sub committee that can delve into this a little bit further. I know that some of the past commissioners, those who were here only last week, have long said, well, what are we doing here? Let's do something that is that's a little bit more effective for the city. Not that pickleball isn't effective, of course it is, but I wonder if we may be able to dig a little bit deeper.
And so is your vision meaning no cars on Santa Cruz? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, correct. Right. We redirect traffic in such a way that it's all around, right? It's University that goes up to the upper part of Santa Cruz. It's Menlo. It's it may be even some of the side streets, but I think that it's a pedestrian mall / park sort of combination.
Sure.
It absolutely requires a parking solution, and as I said, it's a big fish, but I'm wondering if we should start somewhere here, I guess.
Wow. You think big.
Mhm. Well, I think
Yeah, that is.
I think it's something that maybe makes sense for like a cross commission representative from each, right? Because you're talking about interest from housing and transportation and obviously planning and kind of all the above, right? So maybe there's a cross commission representative each, kind of like what we did when we made the subcommittee for individual playground projects. So something to, a great idea to spearhead for that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that if we can start something that gets anywhere, then absolutely. As I said to Councilmember Mueller, I said, look, why not have each of you council people start a subcommittee, and everyone has different views on this, but if you each appoint someone to that subcommittee, and he says to me, well, Mark, I can't assure that you would be on the subcommittee. I said, Ray, I don't want to be on the subcommittee. There should be housing people, there should be urban planners, there should be people who are qualified to speak to this. And again, in my mind, it's not Menlo Park trying to be anything but itself, that we create something for ourselves, that we're not trying to be Charlottesville, or we're not trying to be Santa Monica Pier, or whatever it is, or even downtown Palo Alto, but that we try to craft this thing and structure this thing so that it best serves our community.
Well, it's too bad, because remember, Mark, they did try that by putting the green turf down on that one side street. Remember that a few years back, and they blocked it off, and they just didn't, like your ideas of bocce ball and things like that. They just didn't have anything there to really attract people, but it was similar idea. It was similar idea.
Yeah, it was artificial turf.
Yeah.
It was a side street. It was a half-assed effort, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if we're going to put up blockades with a couple of flowers on it, then if it's not very attractive, then I mean, as Jennifer says, eventually, yes, it becomes a community-wide effort. It becomes a much bigger fish, and it needs to include housing and transportation and all kinds of people. There's no doubt about that. But if we start small with just the concept of this sort of creating this park. I mean, I guess I'm only thinking of this as a Parks and Rec commissioner from this angle. I get it. We are who we are. We focus on what we need to focus on. It was Council Member Mueller who said, "Mark, I can't do this on my own. If you were on the commission, if you were on the council, it'd be a lot easier." Fair enough. Put your money where your mouth is, I guess. But at least my feeling is that while here, we may be able to start small enough so as to create a bit of a snowball.
Thank you for the comments, and definitely something we can even look to maybe agendize some thought processes around and see what's in our purview and what we can continue to I think a big part of this is to have, Mayor Combs or our city council representative as well stay more in touch with us, and him coming to our meetings, as often as possible as he can, kind of helps keep us more in touch with what's going on down there and how we can be more effective. So appreciate your comments, Mark. Thank you. And I see it is 8:18 and we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
See you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.